Hello, welcome back. Last week I shared a video about how I built a specific feature of my indie fishing game, the minigame or the fishing mechanic, whatever you want to call it, the way you actually catch the fish. And this week I'm going to take a broader view and talk about all the progress I've made since the last update. So this one's going to be a little bit more general, but there's a lot of exciting stuff in it. Also, hello, I'm Savalian. I make videos about games, development, and creativity. Currently working on this little fishing game, which doesn't have a name yet. And it's the first game I'm making in Godot, so it's also a bit of a learning experience for me. The last time I had not done a devlog for a while, so I covered a lot of stuff. So kind of what has been done so far. The fishing system was almost complete at the start of this month about. I had a fish customization system where I could generate different kinds of fishes without having to model them all by hand. I also covered how I'm populating the island with fishing nodes and talked about how I failed at making a fishing line that looked okay and eventually just gave up on that. I may come back to it later, I'm not sure. So I started this video with a complete fishing system that was pretty basic, where you could cast into a fishing node, catch something, and actually see what the fish looked like. And there were different species of fish and different varieties that you could catch. So the very first thing I did was immediately overhaul the fish system that I talked about before. So I talked about it, I made a couple videos, and then I changed the whole thing. What happened was I got a really lovely and thoughtful comment on one of my videos that suggested I use the RGB channels of the texture for different pieces, basically different patterns, different colors, and multiply it with color values to make it easier to customize my fish. And I also learned about instance variables for shaders, which I had used in Unity and I just didn't really know how to do them in Godot, and I didn't think about it. So that was something that saved me a lot of trouble. If you're watching, thank you so much for that comment. I don't know that I did exactly what you described, but it got my brain gears turning and I revamped the whole system. So now it all makes use of a custom shader, some instance variables for different colors, and the strength of different patterns and things like that. And then I use the RGB channels of a texture, so now I can have the base color of the fish, an optional top gradient, an optional bottom gradient, and then an optional pattern over the top of that. And so it applies these sort of in order. And I'm pretty proud of this. I think this looks really good. I'm not loving the surface of the fish. I couldn't quite get it to they don't look particularly wet or shiny or scaly, but this is a lot better than it was. And also the top gradient and the bottom gradients over the base color, I think lend themselves a lot better to how a lot of real fish look with their color patterns. So it's been easy to make fish that actually kind of look like real fish. So I'm very excited about this one. I've also added this to my scene, my test scene that generates fish based on all these variables, so I can plug the values in and see what they look like. With the new fish system, I then made a couple new species of fish and added them to the game. And something I've been kind of uncertain about is whether I should try to make the fish realistic or not. It's not a realistic game in general. It's a very cartoony and silly and has kind of non-realistic vibes. But a lot of games that are like this have fishing, and they do have real fish, like Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing. I think most of the fish in Dredge that aren't aberrations are real fish species. And then some of them also have made-up fish. Like Dredge obviously has the aberrations. Palia, I think, has a couple of real fish, and then a lot of them are made up. And I don't know if people care. I don't know if people have an expectation around this. So I wasn't really sure if people were going to be upset if I made up my own fish and just mixed them in there with the real fish. So I did decide that that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have some real fish and some fake fish, and I'm just gonna hope that people don't get mad. My process so far, which I haven't really made that many fish yet, I've just got a couple to sort of test things out. But my process has been to take a real fish and then come up with ways to sort of make a joke on the initial fish that's a little whimsical. So for example, I started with the cherry salmon, a real fish, and then I made other salmon based on other fruits. I have like a blackberry salmon, a grapefruit salmon. I don't actually remember all the ones I added, but I'm pretty sure none of those ones are real. But I've been kind of doing that where I'll start with something real and then just make silly versions of it, and that's been going well. After I got some fish in there, I started on a feature that has always been extremely compelling for me, and that is a way to track how many of the fish that I've caught. I'm calling it the fish-dex or the fish-a-dex. It's very simple for now. I have not done any work at all in creating UI style or mocking up UI for this game, so every piece of UI you see until I do that is going to look pretty bad probably. They're very default Godot UI style. Sometimes I get a little crazy and I change the colors of the panels, but in general it looks pretty bad, and it's okay. I'll fix it later. But to start on the fish-dex, first I grab all the fish resource files from where they're stored in the hierarchy, and I just use them to populate the fish-dex. So this way I can add more and I don't have to connect them to anything to get them to show up. It will just get all of the resources of this type in the file or in the folder that they're supposed to be in, and they'll show up here automatically. Each entry in the fish-dex has in code the number of times the player has caught it, the name and icon, the rarity. I tried to create icons that I could like procedurally color so that they looked like the fish without having to make individual icons for each fish type, but I didn't like this at all, so I need to take another pass at that. I might just bite the bullet and make individual icons for each fish type. I don't know. It's a lot of work, but it might be worth it, honestly, so I'm gonna see how I feel. Maybe I'll try one or two and see if I like them, because I do not like the icons that I made, so I definitely need to do something else here. But when the player catches a fish, it adds to that count of the number of fish caught, and it changes the fish-dex from a question mark if it was 0 before and now it's 1, to the actual icon. And since I haven't done anything to save player data yet, this fish-dex starts fresh each time I restart the scene. Obviously in the long run this will be associated with your save file, but for now we're just getting the plumbing in. We're gonna hook it all up later. The next piece I worked on is the fishing minigame, and I have an entire video just about this feature, so I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. If you'd like to see the details and the nitty-gritty, I would be honored if you would go watch that other video. But I put a lot of brainstorming into this feature because it's kind of the core thing that the player is going to be interacting with. They're going to be spending a lot of time here, and so I wanted to make sure that I liked it and that I got some good bones in there from the beginning. And what I ended up doing was this 3-lane rhythm game, basically, where the player has to tap one of 3 buttons as they come down the lane. And if they get better than some minimum score I haven't really calculated yet, they get the fish. And if they get below that score, they lose the fish. And it's pretty simple. There's a lot of ways I can adjust the speed and the density of the little dots that come down here, so we can adjust the difficulty of this rhythm game as we go. And at this point it is complete. It still needs balancing, as I said, but it works. It works, and I'm very proud. Baby's first rhythm game. After that, mostly within the past week or so, I've been working on inventory. Once you catch the fish, where does it go? Before this point, it would just vanish into the void. The fish was just gone. Now it goes into your inventory. And I decided that at least for now, I don't want to do any inventory management or limit capacity, partially just because I don't tend to like those in games. I will admit, I loved the one in Dredge, and it was one of the things that made me want to play Dredge, was that like Tarkov-like sort of Tetrising in the fish. But I think it makes more sense for Dredge when you have these dangerous fishing expeditions and you want to sort of maximize your haul. I don't know that it makes as much sense for my game because the focus is a little bit different. And the other reason is just that things get more complicated in the code. If you have a maximum capacity, you need to figure out how you're going to handle the case where the player tries to pick something up and it doesn't fit. You're going to have to figure out how to let them drop stuff and reorganize stuff and like storage, and I just didn't want to think about any of that right now. So if I do implement some sort of inventory management like that, it will come later. But right now, I just wanted you to be able to catch the fish. And the way that we'll limit, like they can't just keep catching an infinite number of fish, is because each run that they do will have a limited number of fish to catch. And there will be ways to like encourage more rare fish to spawn or make catch rates higher. For now, this is just, it's very simple. We have a grid and it shows the fish. And we use the same bad fish icons that the fish-a-dex does, but in this one I'm not even tinting the color, so they're just all white, so they look even worse. But again, I'll improve this later as I figure out a solution for the icons, because the focus right now for me is just to get things working, get everything working, get it hooked together, make it something I can play, and then we'll polish it all up when it's all connected. As a last little bonus step, I also added code that calculates a base value of each fish. The idea I have for the lore of this game, that I'm still working through, you know, everything you see here is a work in progress, but the lore I'm working with is that these fish are special because they're like absorbing power from this ocean. It's like a magical ocean, a magical body of water. So the bigger fish will have more power. It's kind of like mercury poisoning, honestly. The bigger fish absorb power from the little fish that they eat, and they live longer, so it builds up. But it's okay. The magical power is good. It's a source of energy for the people of this world, and so they want the fish. They want the fish, and we're going to catch them and we're going to sell them in our little shop. So I've added a little calculation that takes a base value determined by like the fish's type and rarity, and it adjusts that by the size, because the size of the fish is randomized when they're spawned, and then it adds that value to the fish data so that each fish has its own base value, and then like later you'll have different ways to make it worth more to the customers and whatnot, sell things, you know. And I don't know when I did this, I don't know if it made it into the last devlog or not, but I also went in and made it so that the rarities that the fish have actually do something. So there's a certain percentage chance that you'll get certain fish based on rarity, and I just used a pretty basic like weighted loot table implementation for this, where you roll a random number, and then if it's below a certain amount, you take that first item. If it's below the next highest amount, you take the second item, and you set up the table so that the rare stuff has a smaller window, if that makes sense. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point, because it's really useful and it's really simple, but I don't see people talking about like how to set up like a loot table, a weight table, so maybe we'll do that. But the very last thing I did was actually just a bit of preparation for the next big thing I'm going to be working on. So now that the fishing system is fairly complete, I'm not sure what else it needs. Well, actually, I do know. There are some other things it needs, but we're going to talk about those later. But now that the fishing system is mostly complete, the next big thing is the fishing runs and the infrastructure I need for that. So I've talked a little bit about this before, but my plan for this game is that you go on these little like roguelite style fishing runs where you hop from island to island, and then you come back with pockets full of fish to sell at your shop. And so I need the part where you can actually go to different islands, and also I need to make the place where your shop will live. Because right now it just doesn't exist. It hasn't been implemented, and there's a lot to do here. I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm trying to take it one step at a time. So the thing I did within this update is pull my island generation code into a sort of separate block, a separate function that I can easily rerun, and I added some code to reset the game scene so that it's if I didn't do that, it would just put the second island right on top of the first one. So I've made some code that resets the scene properly, lets you take in some parameters for the size, and rerun it so I can just press a button and regenerate the island as many times as I want. And that's the first step. The next step will be to actually have different island types that look different and behave differently. So it's kind of a big thing, and I'm a little bit nervous, but we're doing it. We're figuring it out. And that's it. So we made a lot of progress in the past like month and a half, something like that. It's been a really good time for me. I've been enjoying development. It's been going well. I haven't been too blocked on anything. So I'm hoping that this momentum continues, but we can never really know for sure. But I will make one small announcement here. I think what I'm gonna do, and I've wanted to do this before, and I've just been afraid to do it, but I think I'm gonna take just like a tiny step back from YouTube. Just a little one. Don't get scared, because I've been posting weekly videos for quite some time, and it's a lot of work. And I was posting weekly videos specifically because that's kind of the cadence that the YouTube algorithm tends to like. It likes when you post at least weekly, and it tends to show your videos to more people, and you get a little bit more growth that way. And since I have made my goal of becoming a partner, I think they call them YouTube partners. I've made that goal, and I've still been afraid to slow down even a little bit. But it's a lot of work to make videos every week. It takes many hours, and I work full time. I'm trying to make this game. I'm doing art. I'm fulfilling sticker shop orders. It's a lot going on at once, and I think it will be fine if I make videos, for example, every other week. I think it's gonna be okay. So I'm gonna try and make that step. Again, the YouTube algorithm has me in like a stranglehold, so I'm a little bit afraid, but I'm gonna try to do that and see if I can spend that extra time working on my game. Because the other thing I've noticed is that you guys like the dev vlogs, you like the game updates, you like game dev content, and I currently can't get that out every week. I just don't do enough of it in the week to be an interesting video. I need a little bit more dev time built up to actually do something that's going to be worth talking about. So I think by stepping back to maybe every other week, I'll be able to spend more time on development, and the devlogs will be a little bit more juicy. I'll have a little bit more content to work with. And then, as always, if you want to see more of me, you can always find me on Twitch. I'm currently doing 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 Pacific. I don't plan on changing that schedule soon, but if I do change it, I'll update my Twitch page. It has a little schedule on there that you can look at and see when the next stream is supposed to be. And it's all like time zone focused, so you don't have to do any math. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm very excited about how my little game is coming along, and even though I'm extremely intimidated by the part that comes next, I think it'll be really cool once I figure it out. So in the comments, let me know, does it bother you when games have real fish and fake fish, or do you not care and you don't even understand why I'm asking you this question? Either way, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing, because I'll be back soon, maybe a little less soon than we're used to, but it's going to be okay. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye!